Okay, so let's jump right into a really big issue facing, well, pretty much everyone in education today, the motivation crisis in our schools. If you're a teacher or a parent and it just feels like it's getting harder and harder to get students to lean in and really engage with their work, you're not imagining things. You're not alone. This quote, it just hits so hard, right? It's something you hear from teachers all over the country, and it perfectly sums up the problem. It's not about getting kids to follow the rules. It's about that deeper struggle of moving them from just doing what they're told to wanting to do the work. And hey, this isn't just the feeling people have. The data backs it up. National polling from Gallup shows this is a real trend. A huge chunk of students feel disconnected from what they're learning. And look at this chart. The problem is even worse for students who aren't on that traditional four-year college track. So what's going on here? Well, for decades, our school system has been running on the same old playbook, a system of carrots and sticks. Rewards and punishments. Good grades, extra credit, pizza parties on one side, and detentions and bad grades on the other. But that playbook, it's just not working anymore. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. There's a mountain of research showing that those classic rewards, the carrots, can actually backfire. A huge study found that when you reward students just for finishing a task, it kind of kills their natural curiosity. Their brain literally shifts from thinking, hey, this is interesting, to, okay, what do I get for this? It erodes that internal drive. At the exact same time, the world outside of school is changing fast. That ultimate carrot we've always dangled, a college degree, it just isn't the universal motivator it used to be. College enrollment's down, and you see all these major companies, they're dropping degree requirements. So for a lot of students, that clear line from do well in school to get a good job is getting blurry. And that brings us to the real takeaway here. This old system of ours, it was built for one thing: short-term compliance, getting kids to do the thing right now. But it was never designed to build deep, lasting commitment, the kind of engagement that real, meaningful learning actually depends on. Okay, so if the old playbook is broken, where do we go from here? Well, the good news is we don't have to guess. There's a whole science to what actually drives people. And if we look at that science, we can find a much, much better way forward. It really boils down to this idea called self-determination theory. I know, it sounds a little academic, but the idea is super simple. It says that all humans, no matter their age, are wired with three basic psychological needs. We need a sense of choice and control. That's autonomy. We need to feel like we can actually do things and get better at them. That's competence. And we need to feel connected to the people around us. That's relatedness. When those three needs are met, our own internal motivation just takes off. And the best part is, this science isn't just theory. It gives us a brand new playbook, one filled with real, practical strategies that any teacher, any school can start using to intentionally design for motivation. For example, let's take autonomy. You can give students meaningful choices, not a free-for-all, but bounded choices, like picking between 3 different essay prompts. You can also just explain the why behind an assignment, connect it to something real. And you can bring students into the process of setting up the classroom, giving them a real voice in how things run. Then you've got competence and relatedness. We can build that feeling of competence by designing for early wins, letting students build confidence before tackling harder stuff. We can give them feedback that's quick and focused on the task, not just a grade. And then we can foster that sense of belonging by connecting their work to real-world problems they might actually care about in their own communities. But let's be real for a second. What about that student who is already so disengaged that none of this seems to land? The student who just doesn't seem interested in anything? Well, it turns out there's a missing piece to this puzzle, and it kind of flips the whole problem on its head. We've always been taught to think about it one way. First, a student has to be motivated, then they'll work hard and achieve something. But what if we've had the cause and effect backwards this whole time? What if it works the other way around too? Research shows that there's this powerful feedback loop. It's called the motivation achievement cycle. It's a two-way street. Yes, motivation leads to effort, which leads to achievement. But, and this is the key, that feeling of achievement, that little rush you get from succeeding at something, that in turn fuels your motivation to take on the next thing. They feed each other. You see this everywhere in life. Think about a sports team that starts the season with a couple of wins. Suddenly, practice feels different. There's more energy, more drive. Or think about a student who has been struggling with a math concept, and then they finally get it. That aha moment doesn't just solve the problem. It creates a jolt of motivation for the whole subject. Success breeds motivation.
And that is the big aha moment. We can't just sit around and wait for motivation to magically appear. We have to be architects of achievement. We have to intentionally design lessons where every single student has the chance to get a win, to feel that sense of progress and competence.
This one idea changes the entire conversation. It stops being a kids these days problem. It's not about a flaw in our students. It becomes a design problem. How do we design our schools and our classrooms to kickstart that positive cycle of success and motivation? So, what could this actually look like in a classroom? Well, here's a quick starter kit. You start by making the work relevant. Then you give students some choice. Then, and this is so important, you get them to a first draft quickly so they feel that immediate sense of progress. From there, it's all about a loop of feedback and revision, all while you're praising the effort, not just the final score. Ultimately, this is the shift we need to make. It's about moving from that old, tired playbook to a new design. So instead of just using carrots and sticks, we provide clarity of purpose. Instead of points and penalties, we offer a meaningful challenge. We move from demanding compliance to offering real choice. And we shift focus from just individual scores to building a true sense of community. And this right here, this is really the most important thing to take away from all this. The problem isn't our students. The problem is the environment, the system, the design that we've put them in. And the hopeful part is we can change the design. So that leaves us with this final big question to think about. This isn't about making school easy. It's about making the hard work matter. It's about how we can finally build a system where students are driven by purpose and curiosity, not just by points.